Hi, it's Sally-Shakti, your visionary writing guide, and welcome to Tarot and Astrology for visionary writers from Monday, the 27th of November to Sunday, the 3rd of December, 2023. And today is the day of our penultimate full moon of the year. And I really want to take a deep dive into the energy of the full moons, this Gemini full moon that we have today, and the remaining full moon in Cancer that we have coming up on the 27th of December. I want to take a deep dive into the full moons and into the correspondence with the tarot. So we're going to take a bit of a deep dive around the energies of astrology, numerology, and tarot in today's video. And yeah, we'll see where that takes us. I want to try and kind of explain where I'm going with this step by step logically. So today is the Gemini full moon. We're in the energy of the full moon in Gemini, and also the moon. You might have seen the moon if you've been able to see the moon in the last few evenings. You would have seen it very close to Jupiter as it was moving through Taurus, and I mentioned I've mentioned in a few videos now that when the moon is very close or seems very close by degrees to a planet, and we can see that in the sky, we can also feel it very much more strongly in our own energy fields. So the energy of Jupiter is an energy of magnifying, intensifying, expanding. It's also an energy of abundance, of joy, of jubilation and liberation. The proximity of the moon to Jupiter, which has been shining, that bright, big, shiny planet, but looks like a star, that's been next to the moon for the last few evenings, that's Jupiter. And we may have been feeling extra. We may have been feeling extra abundant, we may have been feeling extra joyful, or it might have been that the energy of Jupiter has been expanding the sensations that we are experiencing from this Gemini full moon. Jupiter is still in retrograde, so it's still pulling back towards 5 degrees of Taurus, where we just had the Taurus full moon and lunar eclipse. And when it goes forward, when it moves direct again, it's going to go forward back. It's going to go forward again up to 15 degrees and beyond of Taurus, which is where it's stationed retrograde, Jupiter stationed retrograde, and where it's the astrological point of Beltane. So that 5 to 15 degrees of Taurus has been activated very strongly this year, and the moon has just been passing through those degrees as well. So we've been feeling that energy more strongly and more closely in our own energy field in recent days, especially as the moon has been growing, waxing, and coming to fullness through those degrees of Taurus, and is now in the early degrees of Gemini for this Gemini full moon. And I mentioned in last week's video that we're in an energy where the cycles of the moon have switched since we had 2 new moons in Aries back in April, one at the beginning of the month, one at the end of the month. That has switched the cycle. So we're now having the full moon in the early degrees of the full moon sign before we have then the new moon that comes 2 weeks later in the late degrees of the new moon sign. And they're always opposite one another in the polarity of the zodiac. So where usually we would have a Sagittarius new moon followed by a Gemini full moon, we have now a Gemini full moon in the early degrees of Gemini, followed by the Sagittarius new moon in 2 weeks' time in the late degrees of Sagittarius, when both the sun and the moon will have made their way round to the later degrees of Sagittarius. And what that means for us energetically, I was saying in the last video, that rather than being a clear energy of planting the seeds at the new moon and allowing the growth and fruition at the full moon, what is tending to happen in my experience of these energies is that the full moon coming first is an illumination of what we have outgrown, or what no longer serves us, or is what is not feeling comfortable or aligned in our energy field, and what we are needing to release and let go as the moon then wanes down to the dark moon and the new moon. So that full moon is a real point of tension, because it is an opposition between the sun and the moon. We have the sun in Sagittarius, in the early degrees of Sagittarius, the moon in the early degrees of Gemini. They're forming an opposition, and we have then the fully illuminated full moon, which illuminates for us the tensions and the challenges that we're ready to move through in this lunation, and what we can now release as the moon wanes towards darkness, and then how we can support ourselves with that energetic renewal at the Sagittarius new moon, because Sagittarius is that spark, it's the fire, it's mutable fire, and it's the spark of inspiration, it's the spark of new life, new beginnings, it's that Kundalini explosion of new life creation and new creative possibilities. Sagittarius is the spark in the darkness. We're in the dark winter months in the Northern Hemisphere, and so Sagittarius sets that illuminated arrow on course for us to follow our intentions, our direction, and perhaps create a new path for ourselves. So as we are in the energy of this Gemini full moon, we can be perhaps experiencing the discomfort of what is ready to be released at this full moon, and be beginning to consider what might be that spark of illumination, what might our creative new direction, what direction might our creative new path spark off in when we come to the Sagittarius new moon in 2 weeks' time. For visionary writers and creatives, of course, this time is a really potent time for our journaling, to illuminate what is ready to be released, to illuminate where we are feeling discomfort and challenge and misalignment, and then to prepare ourselves for the new beginning of the creative new direction that we want to put in place and set in motion for the new seasonal cycle to come that will begin after the winter solstice, and especially begin to germinate around Imbolc in early February. So that's a bit of an overview of where we are now and where we're heading in the next few months and across the next couple of seasons in the cycle. I want to bring us back to this Gemini full moon. When I've been feeling into the energy of what this Gemini full moon is illuminating for me, and I hope this is resonant with you too. When I'm feeling into the energy of what this Gemini full moon is illuminating, I'm reminded of the relationship between astrology, numerology, and the tarot. And I learn this methodology from Lindsay Mack on their podcast, Tarot for the Wild Soul. And I think Lindsay learns it from elsewhere as well. So this is certainly not my my original concept. It's something that I'm learning from others who are learning from others as well. So I just want to credit Lindsay for my thinking around this. And Lindsay does a great offer around this at the end of every year called the threshold, where we move from one year into the next. And she guides us through the tarot and the numerology and somewhat the astrology of the energy of the year to come. So that's where I'm getting my thinking from as I move into my exploration of the energy of this Gemini full moon. Because in that system, the sign of Gemini is the ruling energy of the card, the Lovers. And I'm going to be using Chris Ann's Lightseers Tarot for my illustrations today. So Gemini is the ruling energy of the Lovers card. And the Lovers card is number 6 in the major arcana. So where the numerology comes in is that last year in 2022, we were in a 6 year, 2 + 2 + 2, or 2 + 2 + 0 + 2. However that works. Anyway, adds up to 6. So in 2022, we were in a 6 year. So the overarching energy of last year was the energy of the Lovers card. And all of the 4 6s in the minor arcana, which I'm going to speak about in a moment. This year, 2023, 2 + 0 + 2 + 3 is 7. We are in the energy of the Chariot, and that is ruled by Cancer. And I'm going to talk about that later in the video. So last year was a Lovers year. We were working with the energy of the Lovers card in the major arcana and the 6s in the minor arcana. The Lovers card is a card that, again, I get this from Lindsay Mack. The Lovers card is a card that invites us to come back to ourselves, to come back to ourselves as our own first and best lover and beloved, to really notice where we have outsourced our energy or our desires for what we need and given responsibility to some person or institution outside of ourselves to give us what we desire and what we need. So the Lovers can show us where we are externalizing our own responsibility to ourselves, where we're projecting our needs, desires, responsibilities onto another person to give us what we need or what we desire, or even onto an external authority or institution. Now, there's some trickiness with this Lovers card. Ultimately, the Lovers card is inviting us back to self-responsibility and to self-love and self-value, to claim back for ourselves what we have given away to others through giving them or projecting onto them the responsibility for what we desire and what we need, or the affirmation that we for ourselves to be recognized as we truly desire to be seen. All of this is what the Lovers card invites us to give back to ourselves, to see ourselves in that Lover's gaze, and to recognize the potency of our own self-love, self-care, self-worth, and self-responsibility. The trickiness in the card for me is that, especially as a woman, especially as someone who grew up in a working class family, especially as someone in this living and participating in this patriarchal, colonial, capitalist world, I have been taught and conditioned to externalize my self-worth, my self-value, and my self-responsibility at every possible way, in every possible way of doing that, through outsourcing my self-love to a partner or to family members, through outsourcing my financial needs. But who in this world is not in that position? Very few people. As in, again, especially for myself as a woman growing up in a working class family, with all of my ancestral inheritances and all of the cultural conditioning and education that shaped me, and in this current and ongoing economic climate, it can be, and has felt for me, extremely difficult to take financial responsibility, perhaps for, I speak for myself, for my living situation, for my house, my home. How many women on their own can fund or finance their living situation to be fully independent and abundant? I know that some women can, and it's great that women are reclaiming our power and reclaiming our finances and reclaiming our self-responsibility in that area. But I also know that it isn't easy. The economy of this world is not designed for us to be able to afford to live abundantly and creatively. The reality of this world, the fabric of Bridget's Isles and Bridget's world and this web of weird that we live in, that's different. That's the truth that we know in our bodies. There is abundance. It is available to us all. Our birthright is to be resourced and creative. We know that. We feel that in our bodies, which is why so often we feel at odds with the bizarre economic realities of this world that continue to perpetuate the idea and the model of scarcity, whilst also overusing and over-consuming the resources that once were abundant and reciprocal to all, in good measure, where people didn't take more than they needed and they gave back from what they took. Those economies are difficult to find and to recreate at the moment, but I know that people are. And the more we reclaim in small ways our own power, our own potential, our own creativity, and our own resources and abundance, the more we participate in co-creating that new and truer reality. And yet at this time, we still live in the patriarchal, colonial, capitalist economy of this world, which does make it and has made it more difficult for particularly a woman to earn money, to be financially independent, to invest in property or have what we need to support us to live creatively. At least that's been my experience, and this is something that I'm working on from a deep ancestral and intergenerational perspective, as well as from my own upbringing and cultural conditioning. And yet, by making another person, even a partner, responsible for providing those things for me, which in so many ways makes economic sense in this world and has been the learning and the conditioning and the inherited narrative and belief structure. But as I'm noticing the energy of this Gemini full moon and the invitation of the lovers to recognize where I have given away my power to another, to make them responsible for what I need, that is a huge area of growth and transformation and healing and learning for me. What would it look like not to be outsourcing that responsibility to anybody else, but to claim my own birthright to abundance, to resourcedness, to resourcing the creative life that I choose to live? What would it look like? How would it feel to take that responsibility back into myself? Home is so important to me and such an integral part of my happiness that I've been outsourcing responsibility for that to another person. And what this Gemini full moon is illuminating for me is that all the time I've been grasping at that. I've not been getting what I needed and what I wanted, perpetuating my own story of lack and not enoughness. So the Lovers card, or this, what I'm suggesting is the energy of this Gemini full moon is inviting us to take a loving look at ourselves in the mirror. Where have we been outsourcing our happiness, our joy, our responsibility, our sexuality, our creativity? And where realistically might we be able to take back a little bit of that self-responsibility, not to overstretch ourselves in the realities of this financial economy, but to re-empower ourselves with that little bit more integrity, meaning wholeness, because we take back our own energy from where we have projected it outwards and made another person or another institution or another concept responsible for what we feel we lack. And that's an inquiry for me as much as for anybody. Something for our journaling. And it's interesting because numerologically, the Lovers card is the 6 in the major arcana. So it's related to the 6s in the minor arcana. And I was speaking about the imbalance, the economic imbalance in this world that takes too much from the abundant natural resources that ultimately are our birthright. The economy as it is takes that from us, extracts too much, and does not give back enough. And that's a big part of the problem of the narrative that we find ourselves in, how we have become participants in this narrative where we outsource our needs to those outside of ourselves, is because we are embedded in this narrative that somebody else has what we need, and we have to work for them or please them in some way to get the little bit back that we might possibly be entitled to. How can the energy of this Gemini full moon, whilst especially the moon is shining bright near to Jupiter, actually looking like it's in the sign of Taurus, it's illuminating our potential for abundance, and it's inviting us to take back self-care and self-responsibility. And when we connect it to the sixes in the minor arcana, I'm reminded of the Six of Pentacles, which reminds us to keep our energies in balance. It reminds us to be balanced in our giving and receiving of resources, material wealth. How, again, can we bring back a little bit of our own power and responsibility to set that balance in motion for ourselves, and then ultimately for the wider web of weird of which we are a part, of which we are the co-creators in each moment. The Six of Swords invites us to open to support. The Six of Swords invites us to recognize that we're not in the driving seat. And although we are active participants and co-creators in this world, there is spirit beyond us that can help to carry us when we can't make that journey on our own. Especially when we have narratives around hyper independence. How can we open to receive support from those around us and change those narratives? And that's an interesting one, because that's a paradox. There's a paradoxical contrast with the move towards independence and self-responsibility that I was speaking about at the beginning. So how might we balance that in ourselves? Becoming more independent without becoming hyper independent, becoming self-responsible without becoming isolated and closed in. The Six of Cups invites us into healing the inner child and self-care, invites us to remember what brought us joy when we were our younger selves, when we were more free in our thinking and in our engagement with the world. And the Six of Wands invites us to stand up and shine in our own lives, in our own co-creation. So the sixes really, like the Lovers, are asking us to be responsible, to be balanced, to take self-care, to open to support, and to show up and shine in our own lives through that balance of how we navigate the world as self-responsible, interdependent beings, co-creative beings. And so we're talking about the Gemini full moon. We're talking about Gemini being the ruling energy of the Lover's card, asking us to look ourselves in the mirror, like the twins in the sign of Gemini, to look at ourselves in our own mirror, to be our own mirror, and to take back responsibility where we have projected our power outwards, outside of ourselves. And Gemini, astrologically, Gemini is ruled by the planet Mercury. And Mercury is connected to the energy of the magician. And the magician is co-creative, powerful, alchemist. The magician works with all four elements of the earth. The magician works with the earth, air, fire, and water to create in sacred space and to bring into form what previously did not exist in manifestation in this world. The magician brings ideas and inspiration from the other world into form in this world through the material elements of this world. So one of the ways that we can work with the energy of this Gemini full moon is to look at what it is illuminating for us and to take practical steps, to make practical actions, to make something happen, I don't mean make something happen in a reactive way, but like the magician does, to pull new forms into this world through working with the material elements. This is what we do as visionary writers and creatives. We birth and bring in new forms and structures into the world that did not exist before through our creative imagination and through our work with the elements to bring those new forms and structures into being, and therefore become active participants in the co-creation of this web of life that we are weaving. So ways to work with this Gemini full moon: to become the creator, the co-creator of the web that you are weaving through your own creative practice, through your journaling, and through your intentional manifestation of your ideas into form. Journaling, intention setting, your creative practice, your creative process are ways of working physically with the very mental energy of the Gemini full moon, bringing new thoughts, forms, beings, worlds into form, bringing new possibilities, new structures into this web of weird that we are all always co-creating. Being that active participant, taking self-responsibility for the web that we are creating. Through our journaling, through our creative practice, being the active participant in making new, creating new narratives in ourselves and for ourselves that shift the structure of our own thinking and our own behavior and shift the structure of the web that we are weaving. These are some ways that we can work with the challenging energy, if it is challenging to you, of this Gemini full moon this week. I just want to talk a little bit about the full moons of this year of 2023. We have one full moon remaining now after this week, and it is the Cancer full moon on the 27th of December, and that's the last lunation of the year. That is the last significant moon of the year. The year ends with the full moon in Cancer. And the year began with a full moon in Cancer on the 6th of January. So this year has been bookended by the energy, the strong and potent energy of the full moon in Cancer. Now, as I said earlier, numerologically, 2 + 0 + 2 + 3 is 7. So that makes this year a chariot year in the numerological tarot. Chariot is the number 7 card in the major arcana. I know for myself and for many people I've spoken to this year has felt like it's been very difficult to get things started or to get things moving or to find the momentum for what we have been trying to create and what we have been wanting to happen. The energy of the chariot is the energy of, again, I get this from Lindsay Mack, and they put it like this: it's the energy of being in the birth canal, but not fully birthing. It's the energy of knowing that the old structures need to change and the old structures will not carry us any further. And being in the process of the old structures dissolving and decaying and breaking open and breaking apart through us and in us and around us. And yet not being in the rebirth, the restructuring. The sevens in the minor arcana and the chariot in the major arcana is a very liminal energy. This has been a liminal year. Things have been ending, breaking, falling away, dissolving. There has been grief. So much deep emotion, so much healing and feeling. And yet there has not really been, for myself and for many people I've spoken to, that energy of knowing what's coming next. We're still in the dissolving. We're still in either the death process or the birth canal, but we haven't moved yet into the rebirthing. This has been a painful and difficult year for so many people that I've spoken to, myself included. Things have just not got moving in the ways that we've wanted them to. The energy of the world is in chaos and destruction. Things that we have loved, that we thought would always continue, have broken and dissolved or been dismantled and fallen apart. And we don't yet know what is the new structure that is going to give form to where we're going. And of course, we are participants in co-creating that new way of being. It hasn't been formed yet. And so we can't know what it is, but we are in the process of that destructuring and restructuring. And it has felt very tender and vulnerable and grief-filled and painful. And this energy of the year that is marked by the energy of the chariot in the major arcana of the tarot has been bookended, or is being bookended, by these 2 Cancer full moons. The first moon of the year in the first week of this year, and the last moon of the year in the last week of this year, in the final week of this year. Cancer full moon. What have we got? 16 degrees of Cancer was the first Cancer full moon this year on January the 6th. Sitting absolutely on the axis of ancestral healing. We have got Cancer rules the 4th house in the wheel of astrology. So whatever is the energy or the sign in your 4th house, astrologically, it is ruled by Cancer. It's the energy of home. It's the energy of family. It's the energy of mother, especially mother line, ancestral healing. It's the energy of nurture. It's the energy of giving and receiving love in a nurturing relationship, like a mother loving relationship. And I know that not everybody has that relationship with their natural birth mother. But that is the energy of the sign of Cancer, the energy of these 2 Cancer full moons that mark the beginning and the end of this year, and the energy of the Chariot that has carried us through this year. This year has been an energy of working with deep ancestral healing. We came in this year, we entered this year with a full moon on the ancestral healing axis at 16 degrees of Cancer. It's an energy of ancestral healing. It's an energy of deep diving into the mother wound. It's an energy of deep diving into that liminal birth canal and not knowing what shape the world is going to be taking when we exit into our rebirth. It's been an energy of deep diving into the 4th house energies and issues of our birth chart, home, family, ancestors, healing. And it's been an energy of, it's been a painful energy for many of the people that I know. This whole span of time of this year has been bookended by this energy and has been carried through or shot through with this energy. The energy of the sign of Cancer, the energy of the mother, the energy of ancestral healing. So much of the work that we've been doing this year has been related to ancestral healing and releasing, letting go of old narratives, old conditioning, finding our place again in the world that is changing. So the upcoming full moon, the last one of the year, on the 27th of December, is also going to strongly resonate with that energy and then move us forward into 2024, where the first moon, where are we here? The first moon of 2024 will be the new moon in Capricorn. So I think that will give us more strength, more stability, more of a firm foundation, more purposeful. Interestingly, we end next year with this energy of the we've got the full moon in Gemini and then the new moon in Capricorn. So the moons switch back next year. We begin and end next year with the new moon in Capricorn. So that, as we move into a year 2 + 0 + 2 + 4 is 8. That is the energy of strength in the major arcana. We'll be moving into the alchemical, the transformational year of the 8s and of strength. And it's interesting again that next year will be in the energy of strength and will be bookended by 2 new moons in Capricorn, which will give us more strength, commitment, direction, practicality, action, tangibility. So what can we do this week? This week, we can work with the energy of this full moon in Gemini. We can journal with what is being illuminated for us, especially in relation to where perhaps we've given our power away, and energies that we can call back and claim back for ourselves as we empower ourselves to move forward differently, to let go of the limiting narratives that have shaped our world and to participate in co-creating an alternative reality. We can journal, we can bring new forms and possibilities into manifestation through our creative and visionary practice. And we can set our sights on the creative spark of the upcoming Sagittarius new moon, where we will have the fire of creative passion to give us the momentum to move through into the next cycle of the seasons. So, a card to support us with our journeying and our practice and our journaling this week is the Wheel. A reminder of the energies that come and go, that are always in balance or always seeking to rebalance, so that what we let go of is also an opportunity to welcome in new possibilities, so that whenever we are feeling a lack of resource or a lack of abundance, we have the opportunity to open ourselves up to receive what is always available to us and what is always our birthright, to feel resourced in whatever ways we can, to resource ourselves and to feel resourced in whatever ways we can, to call back our energy into ourselves. And that as we let go of what is being illuminated and coming to our attention to be released, that we are creating space and possibility for new narratives, for new creative expression, for new possibilities to arise in our lives, for new resources, new support networks. I think that's all I want to say about the energies this week. I think I was feeling really called to do a deeper dive that brought in more of the tarot into our exploration. And so I hope that has made some sense for you and given you a little bit of something additional and interesting to think about on your journey. So I'm sending you lots of love. Please come and find me on social media at Writing Thriving. Come and grab some free gifts from my website, and I look forward to seeing you again soon. Lots of love and take care.